Thank you all for coming on behalf of all of us. My name, for those of you who have not yet met, my name is Tina Cassidy, and I'm the Planning Board Director and the Administrator of the City's Redevelopment Authority. We're here this evening as part of an effort that we have to some longer-term planning for a very important part of our community. I'm going to turn the meeting over just very briefly to Mayor Galvin to make a few opening remarks, and then he in turn is going to turn it over to MAPC so we can get our presentation started. Mayor Galvin?
Good evening. Thanks, Tina. Welcome, everybody. Good to see everybody here tonight. Tonight's it's a good opportunity for everybody in the community to express their opinions about what they'd like to see happen down in Commerce Way. And Commerce Way, I know everybody here is familiar with it, but we have tremendous opportunity down there. Tremendous opportunity for planning, for growth, and for a strong tax base. And we've been working with MAPC. We've got a couple of people from MAPC who put on a presentation. They're the premier planners in the state, and we're lucky to have them. And they'll put on a nice presentation. But before I go any further, I'd like to introduce some of the aldermen who have been here from the get-go. I know it's the Alderman Gately, Alderman Gaffney, Alderman Campbell, and President Hagedy's over here. We get Darlene Bruin, Ward Alderman from Ward 5. Michael Anderson's here as well. Ed Tedesco, and I see Joe Demers, school committee. Also, he's a candidate for state rep. I see Ricky Meadows for school committee. I also see Lindsay Higgins in the back. So there's a lot of support from city council, school committee, and I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize my friend Jim DeWile. Let's give him one of these. The city. We're sad to see him go, but I know he's going to be with us in every stretch of the way. And I've had the pleasure of working with Jim for the past 10 years, and he's done a lot of great things for the city as far as bringing in revenue, grants, and whatnot. Jim, can't thank you enough for what you've done and your passion and commitment to the city. So really great to have you here as your strong show. And I know there's a number of planners here as well, property owners. I see some property owners out here that are interested in seeing what's going on. So again, tonight's a very open forum. It's going to be good for everybody who's here. We're here to listen to you. But we've got a great opportunity. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Chris and MAPC for their presentation.
Okay, I guess the robocall worked. Here. So my name is Chris Cushel. I'm from MAPC. Can people in the back hear me?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll hold this. So my name is Chris Cushel. I'm from MAPC, which is the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. For those who aren't familiar, we're the regional planning agency for the 101 cities and towns that comprise the Metro Boston region. We do a whole host of sort of traditional land use planning, as well as planning more innovative areas, such as we have an arts and culture division, a public health division, and we do things as random as helping to procure your fire trucks at a good rate. I want to just quickly introduce sort of the team that we have here. So I guess I drew the short straw up here talking, but Karina Milchman, who's our chief housing planner in the back, she is co-managing this with me. We also have Travis Pollock, who's a senior transportation planner, and he does a lot of work related to suburban mobility. And Josh Eichen, who's an economic development planner, who does market analysis type work. Okay, so I'm going to give a bit of a presentation first. It's going to sort of cover three areas. First, I'm going to talk about what the sort of this plan and the process for this plan is. Then we're going to talk a little bit about why we care about this area. I'll even define what that weird acronym eTOD was. Somebody recently just said to me that it means time of death, and it does not mean that in this context. And then we'll get into the details of the study area itself. After that, we're going to break out and go down there. We have these different stations set up. Kind of think about your sort of middle school science fairs, sort of set up like that around different topics, and you can get some more information related to that. Okay, starting with the overview. So, plan of the process. So we're here for really two reasons tonight. One is we want to give you guys some information, and second, we want to get information from you, get feedback, and help us sort of shape what this future plan would be. Some things to think about as we kind of go along throughout the night. think about sort of the land use. So what is missing in Woburn? What do you think you need more of in Woburn? Think about that as the city scale, as well as where do you think in this area along Commerce Way could maybe accomplish some of those items that you think you need. Think about what is the look and feel of the area. What's the design? If you're a visitor, if you're a resident, if you're a worker, what makes you want to go to a place? Is it the streets, etc.? And then finally, think about the connectivity. Think about how do you get around? Everybody today gets there by driving. Does that have to be the future? Is it driving as well as walking, biking, taking shuttles? So I want to orient people to the location a little bit. This map here, we've taken it and sort of twisted it around just so that it could all fit. So we have on the left side is where Mishawam Ave is, Mishawam Road is, the Woburn Mall. Across the street is the Lowe's. And then along what forms the eastern border on the bottom of the diagram is Commerce Way. That's one border of the study area. On the other side is the commuter rail line, and it ends at Anderson Station. And this is that in the diagrammatic form. This is sort of the diagram that we're going to be sort of using throughout. So just want to make sure we're all sort of oriented. So the plan, what is it going to actually consist of? It's about a year-long process. We're several months in at this point. One component will be creating a vision for this area. So this is what we want to hear from you. What do you want this place to be in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years? And it might not be that different from now. That's sort of one of the things we want to hear. One of the things that we at MAPC always sort of add a lens to are including these what we call equity objectives. So if there's going to be, we want this place to be a place where in the future people across the economic spectrum have the ability to sort of live here and work here as well. Having the greatest plan doesn't really mean anything if nothing can be built because there's no market for it. So we do a market assessment, and so we look at what is the market demand for residential, commercial uses, retail and office uses. We're doing a related project on the other side of the train tracks along New Boston Street to think about ways to enhance the commercial vitality of that area. We look at the zoning. So zoning, for those who don't know, that regulates things such as the uses that are allowed, the building heights, setback, parking requirements, and so that's one of the main ways that we can help shape what the future built environment looks like. And then we are working on sort of a specialized type of zoning that's called 40R smart growth zoning that we can I'll explain a little bit later. And I don't want to get too much into the details on that right here. And then finally, again, what is I saying? How do you get around? Are people able to bike, walk, take a shuttle bus? First last mile connections refers to, for example, let's say you work in Cummings Park and you wanted to take the train here and get off at Anderson. Well, how do you get from Anderson to Cummings Park? You can't do it today, and so in the future we're trying to find solutions for that. Okay, so why do we care about this location? A few reasons. First, the city has done a couple plans recently, a master plan and a housing production plan. These are citywide plans that had a number of goals. A number of these goals can be actually reached through this plan. Now, this is sort of the next level down of looking at it. I'm not going to go through the list of all these relevant goals here. There is a poster board up back here that kind of lists all these in detail. I encourage you to sort of take a look at those and read them if you're interested. Second reason is, and this is what the TOD is transit-oriented development. So I have a definition here. It's a type of development that includes a mix of housing, office, retail, and other amenities integrated into a walkable environment close to transit. Some people consider sort of TOD right at the station. At MAPC, we sort of have a broader view, anywhere between a half a mile, even up to a mile away from the station, if it's sort of considered walkable and you're able to get to the station easily. We also add the E at the beginning, meaning equitable TOD. And again, this adds that lens of ensuring that the area has affordable housing, that existing businesses are still able to sort of thrive there if they choose to, and that there are ways for people to get around for everybody. So why do we care about TOD now? There's a couple macro forces that have been sort of at work, at play. First is there's a shift in cultural preferences that we've seen, really, especially over the last 10, maybe 15 years. There's a lot of sort of evidence and research to show that people are just sort of being attracted to these cities in more walkable environments than they were before. I think one nice sort of anecdote that I kind of think that resonates with me is to think about what the TV shows used to be. When the previous generation, TV shows were the Brady Bunch, Leave It to Beaver, places that all took place in sort of these homogenous suburbs, and that was the place to be. If there was a city-focused show, it was probably like a gritty crime drama. To think about then in the 90s, there was a switch. Shows like Seinfeld, Friends, Sex and the City, these were all shows that made city living really fun. So that's sort of evidence of this cultural shift. And that combines with the second force, which are these changing demographics. So we have an aging population. The baby boomers many of them are retiring. Many of them are empty nesters now. Many of them are looking to downsize their homes. Well, of course, not everybody, but some want to downsize their homes. Many of them want to stay in their neighborhood, in their city, but they're looking for different options. And many of them don't want to or are unable to drive every time they want to get a coffee or a bite to eat. On the flip side, we have the millennials. They are the people who grew up with these TV shows. They are ones that are attracted in large part to city living, but many of them are priced out of places like Somerville, which is now unaffordable to so many of us. And so they're looking for these in other places. The middle group, we're still seeing that the people, when you start to get into your mid-30s, you're starting a family, many of them are still looking to, they care mostly, number one, about schools, and often they care about still having a bigger home, more space. But that being said, they're increasingly attracted to living in places that have these sort of downtown feels nearby where they live. Just a quick note, when I talked about the mixture of uses, some people wonder, do we mean a building that is mixed use, meaning maybe you have a ground floor retail with people living above it, or do we mean a neighborhood that's mixed use, meaning you might have a retail building next to residences, next to office? And the answer is we mean a mixture generally. And I think the secret sauce is ensuring that the public realm, the streets together are all well integrated. Another reason we care about this area is its location. It's quite close to Boston, which makes it attractive compared to, we've worked on projects in places like Natick and Framingham. I'm working on one way up in Rockport right now. Boston's quite close. If you look at this diagram, if you're able to see it, by distance, it's Anderson Station to North Station is actually not that different from some of the further south neighborhoods like Hyde Park and West Roxbury. More relevant, though, probably for most people, is how long it takes you to get places. And actually, if you take the commuter rail from Anderson Station, if it's running on time, which I know is not always going to be the case, but it's actually 20 minutes, and it's much easier or quicker than getting from places along our quote-unquote rapid transit lines. Like the red line from Harvard Square would take over 20 minutes. The green line from Brookline could take you 40 minutes. And then the final piece is the size of the study area. This area isn't necessarily all going to change, but the large size under review is in and of itself an opportunity. And for me, it sometimes helps just to look at some other slides that are comparison sites. So I have a couple slides here just to give a sense for the scale, not to suggest that this is the type of development you should necessarily want to see in the future. But the study area, which stretches about a mile long, you basically could fit the entire Back Bay of Boston into this study area. It's quite a big area. You could fit 2 assembly rows in Somerville for those who have been there. More than 2, actually. And you could fit about 4 Third Avenues in 4 Third Avenues in Burlington, which I'm assuming most people have been to. So it's a big area. All right, final thing. I'm trying to keep this presentation brief so that we can kind of move to the open house portion of the night.
Good luck with that.
Is to look a little bit at the study area. So the study area is comprised of 29 parcels. Many of them are quite large. The Woburn Mall parcel is over 20 acres, about 23 acres. Anderson Station at the other end is 26 acres. There's another large parcel in there that's even larger than that. Many of the parcels are bigger than 10 acres. Surface parking covers 40% of the land area. That's a lot of parking space that you're using right now. And if you actually excluded the wetlands and other areas that couldn't be built on, that number would actually even go up. And total built area is 1.3 million square feet. So the zoning I mentioned, that's one of the really sort of critical things that we always want to take a look at, and we want to look at what is there today. So within the area today there are 2 zones, primarily, actually 3. There's the interstate business, which is what the Woburn Mall is, and a couple other parcels further to the north side of it. And then the rest of it are industrial part 1 and 2, which are very similar with a couple minor differences. I won't go through all of the sort of uses here, but just to give a sense, interstate business has a focus on allowing retail uses and some office types of uses, versus the industrial park, which allows things that you would expect, light manufacturing, heavy manufacturing, as well as office uses. Another thing I should note about zoning is some things are allowed sort of by right, some things require a special permit. And that's one of the things that we'll be looking at, is not just what's allowed, but how is it allowed. And sometimes the zoning might be right, but there could be other types of barriers in terms of the red tape to actually get things built. And so there are some things that require a special permit. For example, within the interstate business, they allow residential above retail, but it's through special permit. And then, just to add a little bit to the complexity, there is what's called an overlay district. So this gives an additional option for developers, if they fall within the district, to either use the base zoning or the overlay zoning. So this is the Commerce Way Overlay District, which allows very different uses by special permit. It allows residential uses in there. To date, I don't believe anything's actually been built under the this overlay district, but there is a one development that has received a special permit and is now going for some of its other permits, and that's up north, very close to Anderson Station. Then we compare what the zoning is to what the actual land use is. So zoning is what's allowed, land use is what's actually there. The majority of it is actually industrial, 57%, and then the rest of that is mostly split through office uses and retail uses. Again, as I sort of, I think I mentioned, but there's no housing there today. Looking at the transportation side is another key factor. The main roadways that sort of comprise the study area are Mishawam and Commerce Way, and as well as Atlantic Avenue, which leads you to Anderson Station. Commerce Way and Mishawam, they're very high volume roadways, as I'm sure most of you know, as they connect between 93 and bring you close towards 95. They're also dangerous roadways. You can see these red blobs that are at those intersections are indicative that these are among the highest crash locations in our region. One other thing in terms of the transportation network, just to mention, I think probably a lot of you know, is that just north of the study area, the new Boston Street Bridge will be going in the next couple of years, and we have a little bit more information on that at some of the stations. So now I just want to zoom in a little bit and look at Anderson Station. This is another potential opportunity. I think if you see this view right here, you see a lot of pavement, which is basically what Anderson Station is. It's mostly parking. There's 2 parking lots, 900 spaces are used for the Logan Express primarily. The whole area is actually owned by Massport, not MassDOT. And then the other half which is used for parking for the commuter rail station. There's about 1,100 spaces, very well used, over 85%. A strong majority come from outside of Woburn to the station. It's a very busy station. It's the 2nd busiest on the Lowell line. It's actually the 7th busiest in the entire network of commuter rail lines, of stations. I just want to give an example to sort of, again, just sort of maybe prime the pump to think about maybe what the future could hold for this area. Looking specifically at and thinking about Anderson Station. We've had conversations with MassDOT. They're not planning on any redevelopment now, but this is sort of the first step that could potentially kick off that conversation if the community wants to think about how to redevelop that area. So I've chosen an example that I think has some similar characteristics. This is Riverside, which is the end of the green line in Newton. If you see the picture there, again, lots of pavement, very similar. And here now you see an area of what their plans are. They're adding a lot of residential uses, some retail space, a hotel as well, an office. And sort of really one of the ways that they're able to accomplish this is because they're going to be taking a lot of that space and actually building a garage so you can house a lot of the same number of cars, but in a structured facility. Here's another view of Riverside. And then this is sort of how they envision the future. And they're underway in various parts of the process of building this out. So the last piece I want to just quickly touch on before we sort of separate and let everybody sort of see all the different stations is we've been working on this with the city and thinking about sort of what we think from our observations are some important sort of high-level concepts of design for the future. So I just want to walk you through those. At the end, I have some handouts that I'd love for people. I'm going to leave them over there. People can fill those out and say what they like about them or what they don't like, if we're missing something important, etc. So the first is we're thinking of this study area in 3 distinct sub-areas. One would be the Woburn Mall area. This, in terms of sort of how we're going to develop it, this, as some people might know, has recently changed hands into developers, and the new owners are very interested in redevelopment. And this is where we're looking at this 40R Smart Growth Overlay District strategy. We'll have a station where people can get a lot more information about it. It's a really great program where the state will actually pay the city in the upwards of up to $600,000 to build, to adopt this district and then allow development there. On the other end is Anderson, which we were just talking about. Again, here I think the strategy would be you create a structured parking facility so you don't have to use as much of that space for parking that could allow development along the edges right at the doorstep of the transit station. And then everything in between, we're kind of lumping in as another sub-area. And we have this sort of broad strategy that we call suburban retrofitting. Encompasses a number of things. It could mean if you have a single-story building, but you want to have some development on top of that, so you retain the existing uses on the ground floor, and then you could build higher up. It could mean that you have an excessive parking lot, and maybe you could build within that parking lot. In some cases, that might mean just completely redeveloping the parcel itself. That we're looking at sort of as a longer-term thing. So in terms of phasing, one thing I should probably mention is we see the Woburn Mall as a near-term opportunity because the developer is willing right now and excited about some redevelopment there. Anderson Station is at best a medium-term opportunity because that would take a lot of work to sort of ensure that Massport and MassDOT's operational needs are met there. And in between, because such a large area, we see that as a longer-term play. The second principle is thinking about the connectivity in this space. Commerce Way is a major roadway. It's not going to really change its character all that much. It always needs to function as a high-capacity roadway and to connect people to the highways. There's still a lot of truck traffic that will always be on that roadway as well. Instead, though, what we think is an opportunity that internally you could start to stitch together an internal roadway connection that would support the local traffic there, that would allow people to find the area that's much more walkable, bikeable, etc. And then you have a river there that I think most people don't even realize is there, but it's a great natural amenity, and there could be an opportunity that we're seeing this happen more and more over the state as people are remediating and embracing their waterways. And so there's an opportunity potentially to create sort of a shared use pathway along the river. And then there's the external connections. So how do we actually get to this area? And we have to improve the safety at those high crash locations. We could think about an Anderson Station. Is there a way to create, this was in the master plan, some sort of sky bridge over Anderson onto the other side of the tracks, and that would end up creating a great connection to Merrimack Street into the residential area there, as well as connections to the other areas along the way. The new Boston Street Bridge will, I think, help in a lot of ways because that will provide a connection both for pedestrians as well as cars, but it's still a little bit further north. So I think both of those aspects would be important. And then finally, thinking about what are termed the first and last mile connections, which I mentioned before. And then after we sort of have these principles for this roadway network, then we think about what would future development, how is that built? What's the form of that? And we think it should be framing that sort of new local roadway. So if you think about, if you're walking through a downtown, and what does that feel like when you walk through a downtown? You have the streets, you have the stores right up in front of you. Think about how that's different from walking along a row of parking lots. And so that's what we sort of mean when we say we think that the new development should frame this roadway. Okay, so that's it for the presentation now. We have several stations back there. We have over there's some brown paper about in terms of like what's your top priority. We'd love for people just to kind of go to that, write what you think. We have something called the Visual Preference Survey. That you have dots, and you can stick on, you see different types of pictures, different types of buildings, and then look about where, if you like them, and where you'd like to see them. And then we have another station about what do you guys think makes a good neighborhood based upon different categories. Feel free to write in what you think would be important to you. We have information about the market. I want to hear what types of stores you would like to see in this area. We have also information about the 40R, and finally about suburban mobility. How can people get around there? We did a large body of work that was a separate sort of but integrated process that we can share some information about that. Also have contact information up there. Feel free to give me a call, give any of us a call or an email. Happy to talk.
Can we ask questions before we break up?
Sure. I want to be respectful of people's time, so I'd be happy to take a few sort of especially clarifying questions and comments, so maybe a few minutes of that. Sure.
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
I'm a 30-plus year resident, not a lifetime resident, but 30 plus. And two parts of your presentation have questions. One comes with the MBTA. I used to walk to the Mishawaka train station until the MBTA closed it. When they were building the Anderson station, they promised they would keep the Mishawaka train station open, which they have not. They also made a second promise, and the second promise was they were going to have a footbridge over the track at Anderson onto New Boston Road, so all the residents in that area could walk to the train station. They physically owned the land right where that footbridge was supposed to be, and for 18 years, they've refused to do it after they said they were promised it. Mr. Meany, who's big in moving, he's since passed. He worked desperately with the MBTA for over 10 years to get Mishawaka reopened, because a lot of people from Boston are coming out here and working in the businesses, and they didn't know what to do that. So that's one thing, that's a flaw with the presentation. Unless you can get the MBTA to do what they promised 18 years ago, which they won't. The other concern I have as a resident, I did some research on this. Most of the land that you're talking about is a toxic Superfund waste dump. All you have to do is go out to www.epa.gov, and you'll see that most of the land that you're talking about is what they deemed a hazardous toxic waste site. It's an official one by the EPA. So a lot of the buildings that have since been built on that land, the agreement with the EPA was no building can be built on that land that could turn a profit. But yet, Raytheon built on it, Target built on it, Bob's built on it, the MBTA built on it. They're all making a profit on land that the EPA says they're forbidden to make a profit on. And anyone that builds on that property, they have to file a finding on what they've done with the land.
Okay, I think I got the question, so I wanted to make sure.
Can you repeat it, Chris?
Okay, can I repeat the question? Okay, one question, the first question was, which I guess is more of a comment. The MBTA had promised having a sky bridge, as I said, the city recommends, and it hasn't been built. And they also had said that Mishawaka Station would be reopened. I don't speak for the MBTA. I think that's one of the things that the city, and in conjunction with MAPC, could have these conversations and understand sort of where they stand on that situation. I also can't speak to the toxic fund site. again, development is going in. I assume that in order to do that, they have to have the proper environmental permits to build there. So I can't speak to it more than that.
Part of that process, parks were supposed to be built there, and a bunch of different public activities were supposed to be built there, and they've never been built.
Thank you. All right, any other final questions before we break up?
Yes.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
If you add housing to that, how is that going to impact the schools? And also, I didn't hear mention of Washington Street. That's a nightmare now to go down Washington Street practically any time of the day. And adding another stoplight is not going to solve that problem. So, number one, schools, and number two, Washington Street.
Yes,
Do we
schools,
have space in the schools?
Schools is something that comes up every time. A couple comments. The type of housing that is often proposed here are the types of housing where families aren't actually living. Often they're more the young professionals before they have families or seniors.
You can't guarantee that.
No, I cannot guarantee that.
So, my question is there space in the schools to add a couple of hundred kids to the grade school closest to that? How will that impact the junior high, and how will that impact this high school?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have
Mr.
an
Mayor,
answer to
maybe
that.
you can address that? If you add a couple of hundred kids to the housing that's been proposed down there, how will that impact the closest grade school to that site? How will that impact the closest junior high, and how will that impact this high school? And
We'll certainly look at that at the time.
well, we need to look at that before anything is decided.
We're not deciding anything. Right now, we're taking questions, we're planning, we can plan for the future. As the gentleman said, a lot of these types of developments, they don't bring as many children as a residential development, single-family home development. So it is what we go by at the time. When the housing comes in, we'll look at it at that time. We have capacity in the schools as we speak right now.
Okay, what about Washington Street? We didn't hear that mentioned. That's a nightmare. How is additional businesses and housing going to impact the nightmare on Washington Street?
Well, this is, Commerce Way is, Washington Street is very busy, there's no doubt about that. Again, when there's any, and Commerce Way is busy as well. When any of these developments do come forward, and the next one that will come forward will be the Woburn Wall. We will be addressing traffic impacts at the time. So that will be the most immediate project that comes forward. But this is really to look at what we see as a very attractive piece of land on Commerce Way. It has great potential for the future, and we get to plan that forward. Funding, of course, we can develop to provide the funding of the impacts of it. I think actually one of the benefits that Woburn has, our tax rate has been low for quite a long time, and it is because of where we sit in between 93 and 95, and we truly do benefit from the commercial district to keep the taxes low. We do put up, again, I know we put up with some of the traffic and some of the other inconveniences, but as a whole, businesses have been very good to us. Excuse me? You know, that would be, right now it's proposed as a 40-yard district. There's a potential buyer, and they'll be coming forward shortly with what we think will be a very good project for the city. Sure. No, they're not going anywhere. You know what? Market basket stand. That's what we're going to do is we'll break up into the groups, and you can make your input known out there. Thank you very much for your time and your attention. It was great to have you.
Oh, yeah.